EX Pokémon are one of the strongest cards in Pokémon TCG Pocket. With insane HP like Venusaur EX, high damage potential like Charizard EX, and tremendous versatility like Pikachu EX Pokémon are the core of every deck. And we see this in our last tournaments with the Pikachu and Zapdos EX deck winning with Mummy Milkers, Jaden winning the second tournament with Mewtwo EX, and nothing but bangers winning with Venusaur and Executor EX. But what if EX Pokémon were banned? Welcome to this week's Little Legends League tournament, where 64 people battled it out in a single elimination tournament with best of 3 matches, to determine who wins the $10 prize fund. I'm your host Shinx TCG, let's check the results. Let's look at the first 16 players of this tournament, and we clearly see that Rapidash Ninetales is a favorite, with a few other interesting decks here and there though, but if you look at the second round, we clearly see that Rapidash Ninetales is doing quite well. But how does it do against itself? Therefore we look at this next battle between Drake and Mia Nillian, and this footage is in the POV of Mia Nillian. So Mia will go second and Drake will go first, but both have a starting hand, where Mia starts with Ponyta and also Drake starts with Ponyta, but has a Vulpix on the bench as well. So right now Drake has more of the cards in need, because these decks with Ninetales Rapidash are very much focused on the Ninetales. Drake has 2 Vulpixes as a second Ponyta on his bench as well, meaning he has a full bench ready to go. However, Mia just draws her Ninetales, which is an important part of her strategy. She puts the energy on her Ponyta, fires off a flare, and the turn goes back to Drake. Let's see if Drake has a Ninetales as well. He doesn't have the Ninetales yet, but he does have the Rapidash, putting an energy on there, able to do 40 damage on the Ponyta, putting pressure on Mia if she doesn't get a basic card soon. But luckily for her, she gets an Oak, allowing her to draw 2 more cards. And does she have a basic? Let's see. She does get the Vulpix that she needs and an XP to go with it as well, which is perfect. So she immediately places it down, puts the energy on the Vulpix, and then also evolves her Ponyta to a Rapidash. So now we're back to Drake, and let's see how he responds. He has a full bench, so there's plenty of options. He first evolves his other Ponyta, then uses an X-Speed to switch out the hurt Rapidash to another Rapidash, puts the energy on there, and does another 40 damage to Mia's Rapidash. So now we go back to Mia, who pulls a Blaine card. So Blaine is also the most important card of this deck. It allows you to do an extra 30 damage if you have a Rapidash or Ninetales. She immediately uses this Blaine on her Rapidash, allowing her to OHKO the opponent's Rapidash. So now Mia has just got her first point. Let's see how Drake responds. So Drake puts his hurt Rapidash back in the active spot, but he really needs a Ninetales in order to put pressure back on Mia. So he puts the energy in Vulpix and then uses a Sabrina to delay the attacks of Mia a little bit by knocking out the opponent's Rapidash. This also gives him his first point, but he's still in a very sticky situation, because Mia has an active Ninetales up and running, whereas Drake does not. So Mia pulls a Giovanni card, which is not too helpful at the moment, but she puts a second energy on the Ninetales and attacks again. This gives her a second point as she knocks out the Rapidash she damaged earlier. Now, if Drake does get the Ninetales right now, he can knock out Mia's Ninetales and win immediately. But does he? He gets a very much needed draw support with Oak and also Pokeball, but does he have the Ninetales? And he does have the Ninetales actually. So he puts the energy on there, knocks out Mia's Ninetales and wins game 1. This game could have gone either way, because if Drake did not get that Ninetales last moment, he would not have won. But let's see how game 2 goes. In game 2, Mia goes second again. In this case, Mia started with a Vulpix and Drake started with a Ponyta and a Vulpix. So in this case, Drake is a little bit better off because he can use his Ponyta. But Drake pulls a red card immediately, sort of removing Mia's advantage of having 4 cards and bringing it back to 3. Mia only pulls 2 Ponytas and a Sabrina, which is not the best, but at least she has some support on the bench later. So let's see what she does with it. She pulls an O card, which is again very useful, immediately places it down and they get 2 more cards. And she gets a Rapidash, which is very much needed. So she places down both Ponytas, puts the energy on the Vulpix, and then also uses the Pokeball to get her last Vulpix as well. And this is actually where we realize she doesn't have a Vulpix in there, she also has Magmar cards in there, which Drake does not. So there's a difference in both decks. So Drake, in his turn, goes back to the Ponyta and then also do a Rapidash, uses Giovanni to instantly knock out the Vulpix. This is a very good play because his 50 damage is huge, and now Mia can't use her Ninetales. So this gives Drake his first point. Mia puts the Ponyta back in the active spot, but let's see how she reacts. She gets another Ninetales card, which is not the thing you want to see at this moment in time, but she places down the Gengar and decides to put the energy on the Magmar as well. And that's all she can do in return, so back to Drake. Drake uses Blaine on the Rapidash to do another huge amount of damage, knocking out Mia's Ponyta. So now Drake is 2 points up, and Mia really needs a saving heal in order to get anything out of this game. But luckily she has one energy on the Magmar already, she pulls a Blaine card as well, so she puts the second energy on Magmar, and then just use a Magma Punch to do 50 damage to Rapidash. So back to Drake, and if he can now use Ninetales, it's game over. He does have a Blaine as well, which is then almost enough to knock out the Magmar, bringing it back to 10 HP. So now Mia has a very important decision to make, because she can't leave the Magmar in because it will knock her out. So she has to switch to Ponyta. So she uses an X-Speed in order to reduce the cost, then switches the Ponyta back in the front, and then uses Blaine, which won't have any effect on Ponyta because Blaine only works on Rapidashes and Ninetales. So now it's back to Drake's turn, and Drake has another Oak and evolves his other Ponyta to a Rapidash, brings in the fresh Rapidash and does 40 damage only. He still doesn't have that Ninetales that will guarantee him the game, so Mia still has some sort of saving hope, saving grace, but she does not draw the card that she needs and therefore has to concede the game because there's no hope in winning. Drake continues into the next round and he has to play against Spore Venom. So Spore Venom also used a Ninetales Rapidash deck. So in this game it starts a little bit later because the footage was started later, but we see that Spore Venom on the bottom has already a Ninetales up and running and knocks out Drake's Vulpix. Now for Spore Venom already is on 2 points where Drake is only on 1. But we clearly see that Spore Venom is in a much better position right now. Unfortunately Drake is not able to do anything, can only do Tail Whip and even lands the tail, so he's not able to save another turn and therefore immediately concedes the game. So game 1 goes to Spore Venom, but let's see how game 2 goes, because in principle we see that the Ninetales against the Ninetales deck can go either way. So in this case Drake starts with 2 Ponytas, whereas Spore Venom only starts with 1. However, he does have a good hand and uses a Pokeball to get the Vulpix as well. This basically gives him the perfect start because he's and the Ponyta and the Vulpix for later as well. But let's see what Drake can do. So Drake uses a red card, which is actually really good at this moment in time, leaving actually Spore Venom with almost the same cards he had before, showcasing how red card can be used occasionally but not always in the best way. So Drake ends his turn by just attacking, and then we go back to Spore Venom. Spore Venom draws this beautiful Sabrina card, but he decides to evolve his Ponyta first, evolve his Vulpix as well, and then place down the Pokeball, giving him another Ponyta. So of course he places this one down as well and puts the energy on the Rapidash, giving him an attack chance, but he uses a Sabrina card first to put damage on the Vulpix. So now Drake's Vulpix is in a very precarious position and he already lost the first game, so he can't afford to lose this one. Luckily he has an Oak, which also gives an XP to move its Vulpix back into its safe position and puts his Ponyta with an energy ready up front, evolves into a Rapidash and then does 40 damage as well. So this game is still quite even, but it looks like Spore Venom has the upper hand with his Ninetales already up and running. So he places an energy on the Ninetales, making it ready for the next turn. So Drake really needs some support right now, otherwise he would be in a very tricky position. But he gets another Vulpix, which is huge because then his damage Vulpix won't be needed anymore. So he knocks out his opponent's Ponyta, or Rapidash, and now basically Spore Venom can use his Rapidash and start knocking out Drake's Pokemon one by one. And this is exactly what he does. He plays the energy on the Ninetales, then uses Sabrina, which of course will then put in the damage Vulpix, giving him his first point. But he does have a Ninetales there. So Drake puts in his Rapidash, which already has had some damage, but he does get the Ninetales he really much needs. He also has an X-Speed, so he can remove his Rapidash back to the bench, put in his Ninetales, and then knock out Spore Venom's Ninetales. And this is a huge moment in the game, because this basically guarantees his victory. Because Spore Venom doesn't have anything good in the bench except for a Ponyta, and his hand is nearly empty. So after he draws his card, he concedes the game because there's no point anymore. So this game goes to a game 3 because Drake wins the second game. Let's see how game 3 goes. So game 3, and Spore Venom has a Vulpix on the line and Drake has a Ponyta on the active spot. So Spore Venom's start is not the best, but he does get the Pokeball, giving him his other Ponyta as well. And he also has an Oak for extra draw support, giving him this Rapidash and another Oak for the next turn when needed. However, he leaves the Vulpix in a very dangerous position, but so far it's fine, but the red card comes out. And the red card is pretty well done here, because Spore Venom now only has a Ponyta and a Rapidash in hand and doesn't have the Ninetales anymore that he had before. But Spore Venom gets another Pokeball, which he'll use immediately, of course, giving him another Vulpix. So now he has a safety Vulpix he can use, and he puts the other Ponyta down, giving him a full stacked bench. Evolves one of his Ponytas to a Rapidash, and then basically sacrifices his active position Vulpix and puts energy on the benched Vulpix. However, Drake is in a similar position because he evolves his Ponyta to a Rapidash and also has a benched Vulpix with energy on it. So now it's basically a race for who can get Vulpix first, but who can also knock out the other team's Ninetales with their Ninetales. So Spore Venom now has an active Rapidash there, puts the energy on it, and has a Blaine and Giovanni for extra damage, and he decides to use the Blaine in this case, allowing it to do 70 damage against Drake's Rapidash. So now we go back to Drake, and let's see if he has the Ninetales. And again, most of these decks really come down to the Ninetales, and he does have it. He puts it immediately in active position and also has a Blaine as well. This allows him to knock out the Rapidash immediately, giving him his second point. So even though it looked like Spore Venom was in a better position, right now Drake is way better, but if Spore Venom gets his Ninetales now, it would be huge, but he doesn't. He does get a Sabrina though, which he can use to sort of delay Drake's attacks. But Spore Venom is a bit confused where to put the energy on. Is he gonna risk it all on the Vulpix, or is he gonna play it safe on the Ponyta? But no, he decides to risk it all. However, he doesn't land the Tail Whip. So his choice of not using Sabrina backfired, and now he concedes the game as there's no hope in winning anymore. And now Drake advances to the semi-finals. So let's take a look at the next 16 players. And here we see a bit more varied decks with a few Rapidash Ninetales, but also some interesting ones like an Arbor Greninja, Venusaur Exeggutor. But again, we see that Ninetales Rapidash wins most of it. So in the quarterfinals, we have Rego against Tribe. Rego starts on the bottom and Tribe on the top. So Rego has to start first. So in this case, Rego is running the standard Ninetales Rapidash deck, where Tribe is running a Hitmonlee Sandslash deck. So it's a different deck we can finally get to see, because I think I'm a bit sick of all the Ninetales Rapidash decks. But don't worry, we'll see more of those. So in the start, we see that Rego has quite a good starting lineup, a good bench, good active Pokemon, and Tribe has a Hitmonlee and Sandshrew. And let's see how it does against Rego's team. So Tribe starts off easy with an Hitmonlee attack on the benched Vulpix, which is very smart and very useful because the Ninetales is a big threat. But Rego does have the Ninetales early, evolves it immediately and puts his first energy on there, and then decides to use an XP to put the Ninetales in the active position where it's usually less safe, but now it's more safe with Hitmonlee in the top. But Tribe has an Oak, he uses it to get 2 more cards and also has a Pokeball, so this gives him a bit more bench, and we see that he also has a Mankey in his deck. He does 30 damage again to a bench Pokemon, this time the Ponyta, and we go back to Rego's turn. So Rego also has some draw support now, but he can also use the Blaine if needed, and he decides to use the Oak, giving him another Pokeball and an X-Speed, which could be very useful as well. Immediately uses the Pokeball to get another Vulpix there, places it down, and then uses Flamethrower to knock out the Hitmonlee, which is a big threat to Rego's team, because if Hitmonlee knocks out anything on the bench, it's easy points. So Rego gets his first point and Tribe puts a Sandshrew up front. But let's see how it responds. So he immediately involves the Sandshrew to a Sandslash, which does a huge 70 damage. And as Hitmonlee already damaged Ninetales, he knocks it out immediately, giving him his first point as well. So now Vulpix gets another chance in the front, because he's hoping to use Tail Whip, I think. And let's see if that's the case. He does indeed put the energy on the Vulpix, allowing it to use Tail Whip. And he does get the heads, meaning Sandslash can't attack next turn, which is very much needed for Rego's team because he is in a bit of a tricky position. But Tribe has the X-Speed, allowing him to put Mankey up front, doing a simple 20 damage. So now we go back to Rego, who has a damaged Vulpix and does not get Ninetales, which he really much needs. But he evolves one of his Ponytas to a Rapidash, and then probably use the X-Speed as well, which he does indeed, in order to switch out the Vulpix for the Rapidash. He then places the energy on the Rapidash as well, and decides to use a Blaine and able to knock it out immediately. So this gives Rego their second point. So let's see, with Tribe now having a Sand Slash there, he can still do quite a bit of damage, but it's not enough to knock out the Rapidash immediately. He also does not have anything else for the bench, putting him in a very tricky situation. So let's see if Rekko can finish it off. He gets a Pokeball, he doesn't get the Ninetales, which could have won the game. But he used the Pokeball to get a Magmar, he places it down, puts the second energy on that Magmar, and then decides to attack without using the Blaine. So this gives Tribe a little bit of a hope probably, because he doesn't know the Blaine is in the last card in his hand. But Tribe has a potion which basically puts him out of reach, which is huge as well. Has another potion to even heal it up to full, and then also has draw support, giving him 2 more cards to play with, but he still doesn't have anything more for the bench. He then knocks out the Rapidash, giving him a second point as well, meaning it's now 2-2, winner takes it all. But Rekko puts the Vulpix in front, hoping for that Rapidash. Hoping for that Ninetales, but he doesn't get it, he gets another Rapidash instead. So he evolves his Ponyta to that Rapidash, switches out the Vulpix that is not needed anymore, puts the energy on the Magmar, and then doesn't knock out, but puts 50 damage on Sand Slash, putting it in a very difficult situation. But Tribe has the Giovanni, which gives him an 80 damage attack, knocking out the Magmar and getting his third point. So this game could have gone either way at any moment in time. Sadly, we only get to see game 1, but game 2 went in a similar fashion and Tribe wins both of them. So Tribe also advances to the semi-finals. But now let's see the next 16 players, and here again we see a lot of variety with only one Rapidash Ninetales deck, but a lot of different ones like a Dragonite, some Weezings, even a Frostmoth Tentacruel, which goes through. And again, the Ninetales gets knocked out, so we see a little bit more varied decks going through the rounds, and we end up with GQQ going into the semi-finals as well with a Machamp Hitmonlee deck. So this is a different deck in the semis again, so far we have 3 different decks there. But let's see how the next 16 players go. So the next 16, we see a few more Rapidash Ninetales again, some Golduck, some Golem even, a few Greninjas, a Krabby of Kingler, some Alakazam decks. So quite varied. In this case, most Ninetales Rapidash go through again. We see Ninetales Rapidash going into the quarterfinals with Hat against Gadgetbug. But Gadgetbug has the type advantage and managed to win against the Ninetales deck, putting Gadgetbug as the last semi-finalist. So now we've reached the semi-finals. There's only 4 people left after 64, and the first one is Drake. Drake used a Ninetales Rapidash deck as we've seen. Next up we have Tribe with a Sand Slash Primeape deck. Then we have GQQ with a Machamp and Hitmonlee deck, and last but not least we have Gadgetbug with a Greninja Golduck deck. So in the semi-finals, Drake will be versing against Tribe and GQQ against Gadgetbug. But as we haven't seen the bottom 2 decks yet, let's go into that one first. So Gadgetbug is on the left and GQQ is on the right, and as I mentioned, Gadgetbug uses a Greninja, a water deck basically, and GQQ uses a Hitmonlee Primeape deck. So Gadgetbug starts with a Psyduck and GQQ starts with a Machop. And I'm sorry for the footage on the right, it's a little bit blurry, but that's the footage we had to work with, so please bear with me. So Gadgetbug uses a Oak, gets some more cards, and so does GQQ. So both players now have a lot of cards in their hands, and Gadgetbug places down a few more on the bench. GQQ however gets a Giovanni for later, but he first plays an Energy Machop, allowing him to do 20 damage Knuckle Punch for the first time. So let's see how Gadgetbug responds. So Gadgetbug gets an X-Speed, but he first evolves his Froakie to Frogadier, evolves a Staryu to a Starmie, and then puts the energy on the Frogadier, leaving his Psyduck out there with an X-Speed and switching it in with the Frogadier. So Frogadier is able to do 30 damage on the Machop, and now the turn goes back to GQQ, and let's see how it responds. So the nice thing about this game is we can see both perspectives throughout, so we can always see which cards are in each people's hands, and then we can see how to respond. So in this case, GQQ uses all his draw support cards, places down the Hitmonchan he got, and evolves a Machop to a Machoke. Machoke is getting a second energy, he also gets healed up a bit more, and then is able to do 50 damage on the Frogadier, putting it in range for a next attack. But we see in Gadgetbug's hands that he already has a Greninja there waiting. So he gets his next card, which is another Psyduck, but immediately evolves of course the Frogadier to a Greninja. He then places the second energy on the Greninja, and then decides to use a Sabrina card to actually remove the Machoke and put Hitmonchan in the active spot. He then uses Water Shuriken on the Machoke, putting it in range for the next turn. He then uses Mist Slash on the Hitmonchan, and basically this way he prevented from Machamp actually knocking out Greninja unless he has an X-Speed. So GQQ then evolves his Machoke to a Machamp, and then puts the energy on the Hitmonchan, doing another 30 damage on Greninja. So now let's see if a Greninja responds. So Gadgerbug now gets a Professor Oak. He gets another 2 cards because he really needs it. His hand is completely empty, and he gets a Misty. He can't use it of course yet, but he decides to put his Greninja on the bench because it's quite damaged, but he can still use the ability knocking out the Hitmonchan in Jikukyu's active spot. So Gadgerbug gets first blood, he knocks out, gets his first point, and the Machamp has to go into the active spot, which Starmie can then put damage on. So now Machamp is severely damaged, but let's see what Jikukyu can do. So Jikukyu has another Pokeball, he gets another Hitmonlee, which I don't think he needs that much, but he places both of them down that he has in his hand. Then uses Sabrina to put in the Psyduck instead. Then puts the last energy on the Machamp. And then puts the Hitmonlee in instead as a damage cushion. So looking at Gadgerbug, he now has another Misty card, which is not really needed in the deck right now. But he uses a Water Shuriken to do more damage on the Machamp, and now it's in range with a Mist Slash from Greninja. He uses the Misty, gets the Tails, because most Misties get Tails nowadays of course, and then decides to attack the Hitmonlee. So Hitmonlee can now damage Greninja, so he really needs to knock the Greninja out, because that's the most tricky Pokemon in Gadgerbug's bench right now. So it's the only thing he does, he puts damage on the Greninja, and then we go back to Gadgerbug. Gadgerbug places down a Water Energy on the Psyduck, then uses a Water Shuriken to do damage on the other Hitmonlee. He then uses Misty again to see if he has better luck this time, but no he doesn't, because as I mentioned, Misties don't get heads. And he knocks out Hitmonlee to get his second point. Or her second point, my bad. So now Gadgerbug has 2 points and Jikukyu has 0. So he's in a tricky spot, but he gets another Giovanni, puts the energy on Hitmonlee, and he can now knock out the Greninja, giving him or her a point as well. So now it's 2-1, but I still think that Gadgerbug is in a better situation looking at it. However, Jikukyu still has a Machamp on the bench there, but it doesn't have energy. But Gadgerbug gets the Golduck he really needs, puts it in the active spot, and then is able to do 70 damage, knocking out the Hitmonlee and basically winning him or her game 1. So this game clearly shows at least both decks are quite evenly matched up, and it really depends on which cards you get first or which card has the better hands. So now we go into game 2, and Gadgerbug goes second and Jikukyu goes first. Gadgerbug starts with a Froakie, Jikukyu starts with a Hitmonchan. So Jikukyu first uses all the support cards that he has, using the Pokeball, using the Professor's Research, giving him a few more basic cards and another Giovanni. They place down the Machop, they place down the Hitmonchan, and then the turn goes over to Gadgerbug. Gadgerbug also has all the support cards, he has 2 Pokeballs, uses them both, gets a Froakie and a Staryu, places down both the Froakie and the Staryu immediately after, and then puts down the Misty as well, hoping to get some early energy going. And this time they do get some heads, and they even get 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 of them, which is insane. Not really needed of course, but 9 energy is just fun to see, because just the sound of the coins flipping is amazing, for that matter. I've experienced, don't worry. But let's see how they respond. We lost footage of Jikukyu right here, but please look at the left on Gadgerbug's footage. So Gadgerbug is now back, it's his turn again. They have a Starmie, they put the energy on there, put that one in the active spot, allowing to put more pressure on Jikukyu. But Jikukyu has a Machoke in the back line, ready with 1 energy, and uses Sabrina to put the Froakie in front. So Hitmonchan is able to do 30 damage to the Froakie, and we go back to Gadgerbug's turn, who now gets a Greninja. They don't have the Frogadier though, but they are relying on Starmie now to do a lot of damage. Starmie is able to knock out the Hitmonchan, giving Gadgerbug the first point again, similar to the first game though. However, when Jikukyu gets his Machamp up and running, it is a threat, a big threat that is not easily stopped because it has high HP and a high attack. But Jikukyu puts his second energy on the Machoke, able to do 50 damage on the Starmie, putting it in range as well. Gadgerbug still doesn't get the Frogadier that they really need. They have 2 Froakies on the bench, both damaged. They also have Psyduck now and a Starmie that's still damaged as well. But they decide to just attack, but Jikukyu has the Machamp this time. So they evolve the Machoke to Machamp, they're able to do 100 damage on the Starmie, knocking it out and putting actually Gadgerbug now on a tricky position. Gadgerbug realizes they cannot win the game anymore because they didn't get the Frogadier at all, making GQQ win the second game, and this match will go to a game 3. So in game 3, GQQ's footage is back again, so we can watch both perspectives again, and in this case Gadgerbug goes first. They each draw their hand and they place down their cards. So Gadgerbug has 3 cards, Frokeep, Psyduck and a Staryu, whereas GQQ only has a Hitmonchan. However, Gadgerbug does get the Frogadier this time, which was the card he was missing last time. But they use the Professor Oak, they get another basic card, they get an X-Speed, and GQQ then also uses an Oak to get more cards as well, but he also gets the red card. They place down the energy on the Hitmonchan, they place down the Hitmonlee as well, but they decide not to use the red card even though Gadgerbug just used an Oak as well. So we go back to Gadgerbug's turn, who gets another draw support card, decides to use it immediately of course, because why not? And they get a Sabrina and a Greninja, so now Gadgerbug has the full Greninja line complete in his hand, but they place down the energy on the Frogadier and are able to do some damage as well. So we go back to GQQ, and if he used the red card now to remove that Greninja, that could be a very good play. They use the Pokeball first though, get another Machop, place the energy on the Machop, place down the Machop they just got, evolve one of them to a Machoke, and then they do decide to use a red card, which is huge even though he doesn't know it of course. Gadgerbug doesn't get the Greninja anymore though, putting them in a very tricky situation. They do get another Misty, let's see if he can get another 9 heads, but it's not that what he needs the Greninja right now, or a Starmie of course. They decide to use the Misty though, and they get only 1 head, so this is a more normal amount than 9 heads of course. They place down the energy of the Golduck, giving it enough energy to attack after switching it out for the Frogadier, knocking out the Hitmonchan and giving Gadgerbug the first point. But GQQ places the Machoke up in front, which already has 1 energy, but they only have trainer cards in it, they still not have that Machamp that they need. So they do 50 damage to Golduck, and then the turn goes back to Gadgerbug. So both players are now waiting for that final evolution card, where Gadgerbug really needs a Greninja and GQQ really needs that Machamp. But the Golduck is able to do a lot more damage than whatever GQQ can do, doing another 70 damage to the Machoke. But GQQ does get a potion, giving it a little bit more health, and has to attack with the Machoke, knocking out the Golduck. The potion was actually very important as well, because now it's out of range of Frogadier's attack as well. However, if Gadgerbug gets a Greninja, he can still win, but he doesn't get the Greninja, he gets a Starmie instead. So he puts the energy on the Starmie, uses an XP to remove the Frogadier from the Starmie, and then decides to attack as well, knocking down the Machoke to 10 HP. But let's see if GQQ gets a Machamp, and he does get the Machamp, and he immediately places it down of course, puts the last energy on, and then attacks with the 100 damage, knocking out the Starmie in one go. So now if Gadgerbug gets the Greninja, they're able to knock out Machamp, but if they don't get Greninja, they basically lose the game. But they do get the Greninja, they place it down immediately, but then they don't put the energy on. Something went wrong there, I don't know what happened. Sometimes this happens, maybe ran out of time, we're not sure what happened here, but that's why GQQ wins the game. So now we go into the finals, where Drayke will face it off against GQQ. And I know I'm not supposed to have favorites, but I really hope the Ninetales deck doesn't win. But let's see how it goes, because the Machamp deck is able to do really well if it can get up and running, and Hitmonlee is able to do damage on the Ninetales early, but Rapidash and Ninetales is of course very strong early on. So this is in the perspective of GQQ, so GQQ is on the bottom and Drayke is on the top. GQQ starts with Machop and a Hitmonlee, where Drayke starts with a Vulpix. So the Vulpix is in a bit of a tricky situation there, because they don't have Ponytas, but let's see how it goes. So GQQ has some draw support, places down another Hitmonchan, and the turn goes over back to Drayke. Drayke gets a Pokeball, which is very much needed, gets the Ponyta from it, places it down immediately and puts the first energy on the Vulpix, but then also uses another draw support card. However, Tail Whip lands on Tails, very fitting of course, and the turn goes back to GQQ, who's able to attack with Machop, but they first of course use the Pokeball to get another Machop card, place it down on the bench, then use Sabrina as well, which is a bit surprising I have to say, putting the Ponyta in, and then is able to do 20 damage to Ponyta. I'm a bit surprised about the Sabrina, because I think if he not used it, they were able to damage the Ninetales early, which would have been smarter perhaps. However, Drayke gets the Drayke gets the Rapidash, puts it on, and the Ninetales as well, as an XP to take it out, and then knocks out the Machop immediately. So Drake is now in a very good situation because he had the X-Speed, they had the Rapidash, they had the Ninetales as well, they had all the cards they needed. But let's see how GQQ responds. So GQQ gets a potion, which is not much needed right now, but they are able to evolve the Machop to a Machoke, and they place the energy on there for later, basically leaving the Hitmonlee out there to die. Luckily, Machop of Machoke is able to survive one hit from a Flamethrower. And surprisingly, Drake uses a Blaine now when he should save the Blaine for the Machoke, you would say. But he's able to knock out the Hitmonlee, but he didn't need the Blaine because they were able to knock it out anyways, you would say. So back to GQQ's turn, they put down another Hitmonchan and they attack. And now we learn why Drake basically already used the Blaine before, because they have another Blaine. And this way, Ninetales is able to knock out the Machoke, getting their third point very fast in the game, but that is what Ninetales is really good at. It's up and running very fast and able to do high amount of damage early on. So now we go into the second game, and GQQ really needs to knock out this Vulpix early on if he wants to win. So looking at the starting hands, GQQ has a Machop and 2 Machamps, but it doesn't have the Machoke. However, they do have the Professor's Research, allowing them to get a bit more draw support, and they get a Hitmonchan as well. So they place down the Hitmonchan and then end their turn. So now we look at Drake. Drake also has a Pokeball, decides to use immediately, gets another Vulpix on the bench, and ends their turn as well. So first turns, nothing happened. So GQQ gets the Machoke that they really need, places it down immediately of course, puts 1 energy on it, and that's all they can do because Machoke needs to. So back to Drake. Drake uses an X-Speed to remove the Ponyta and put in the Ninetales, and this is a very important situation and very unfortunate for GQQ because again Drake has all the cards that they need. They had the X-Speed, they had the Ninetales, they had the Blaine, and they're able to knock out Machoke early on. So now GQQ is in a very tricky situation. They have 2 Machamps, no Machop, no Machoke. They do get a Machop now, which they're able to place down. They're able to use a Sabrina to delay the inevitable, you would say. They place down the energy on the Machop. Can GQQ bring this back? Well, Drake gets another Pokeball, getting another card, another Ponyta, places it down immediately, and has another Professor card. But do they also have an X-Speed? And yes, they do. They do have another X-Speed. They're able to attack with Ninetales again, knocking out another of GQQ's Pokemon. So now GQQ is in an even worse spot than before. They don't have a Machoke yet. Do they get one now? That might be the only saving thing. They do get a Machoke. So now if Drake doesn't have another Blaine, they're able to still win with the Machamp. But let's see if Drake has that Blaine card. And they do have the Blaine card. So this is clearly why Ninetales did so well in this tournament. They're able to knock out the Machoke early on as well, winning the second game and winning the entire tournament. So congratulations to Drake. They were able to win with their Rapidash Ninetales deck, outperforming all other Rapidash Ninetales decks and outperforming against all the other unique decks made by different people. So they are clearly the winner, and we are doing another non-EX tournament on November 7, which might already have happened, but stay tuned for more tournaments by liking and subscribing this video. Thanks!